How good are C0 4-stars?
Well, today I want to have a conversation.
Okay, wait. Let's actually answer that question first, okay? Alright, let's look at C0 4-stars. So let's first put all the 4-stars separated from the rest. Okay. Yep. It was an accident, but like, yeah, sure, he is above the rest. That is true. Okay, so I think the like most important thing here is to properly define our criteria. What sort of teams are you assuming for these characters? Are you assuming the other 4-stars are C0 as well? Are you assuming there's no 5-stars available? Like, what exactly are we doing? And because of that, obviously, there's going to be a lot of subjectivity involved. Personally, I think that there's only a point to this when it comes to looking at their value on an account that doesn't have too much available to them. 5-stars can be available, but not a full team of other 5-star characters. So, like, for example, C0 Farazan wouldn't be looked at in a Xiao Xianyun Farina team. So, I guess the first thing to get out of the way is Bennett. Bennett is one of the characters that gains the least from his constellations. It's not that he doesn't gain anything, it's that he is still incredible at what he's good at, even without any of them. Is C1 though? The C1 is nice, the C5 is nice, but they're just a little bit more attack. People heavily overestimate the value of those constellations. Bennett is one of the characters, if not the character, that, well, maybe not the, but definitely one of the characters that gains the least from his constellations. It's just that he's so good at C0 that a minor upgrade to a really strong character is often going to matter more than a major upgrade to a shitty character that's still going to be shitty post-upgrade. Alhaitham is probably the character who gains the least with cons. That's not true. Alhaitham gains a lot more from cons than Bennett. It's important to realize that they're 5-star cons, so they're a lot more expensive. The return on investment is lower, but the return is higher. Anyways, Bennett, honestly, in a category of his own. Then it's gonna be the really strong supports that don't gain too much from constellations, right? That kind of have constellations similar to those of Bennett, but that aren't as good as Bennett. So Sucrose, Heureuse, Lanyan, Kuki, not Tsingtao, no. Tsingtao may be in this category, but he wouldn't fit that same description. Right? Tsingtao is not a character that doesn't gain much from constellations. Tsingtao gains a lot from his constellations. He's already strong at C0, but the difference between C0 and C6 is massive. Right? When you're comparing C0 Tsingtao to other 4-stars, he's not as dominant as he is at C6. But let's talk about him. The main thing with Tsingtao is that more and more characters get released that don't really need him or work that well with him. And what makes Tsingtao so good as a general rule is that you don't have to sacrifice a lot of damage in order to get an incredibly large amount of utility. At C0, though, you do have to sacrifice a large amount of damage because his personal damage is a lot lower. And new characters have been getting so tailored to specific supports and not tailored towards the vape reaction through normal attacks in a way that hasn't made the utility that Tsingtao provides as necessary. Does that mean that Tsingtao is bad? Far from it. Tsingtao is still one of the better 4-stars at C0, but he's not on the same level as Bennett. Because Bennett is just... Tsingtao just gains so much more from his cons. I do think it's worth mentioning that if you're looking at, like, max investment stuff, you will probably see higher team DPS gain from getting Bennett's constellations in Bennett teams than getting Singto's constellations in Singto teams, because at really high investment, Bennett constellations don't increase Bennett's damage, they increase your carry's damage, and if your carry's hyper invested, that matters a lot more. Is Lanyan that good? Lanyan is a character that has kind of worthless constellations. And she's a TTDS Animo unit that also provides you defensive utility. C2 is nice for the defensive utility, but it doesn't help you offensively. Isn't Fischl an S tier C0 4-star? Her A4 is just that good. The thing about Fischl is that you also have to understand that the C6 also improves the A4. Because the C6 gives you 20% more uptime. That's 20% more uptime on Fischl's ability to proc her A4 as well. On top of the additional Oz hits and the like normal attack hits. I don't think I'd put Fischl on the same tier as these characters if you're looking at C0 only. I think Singto is good enough to be in here. And they're not ordered within the tiers, by the way. I'm not going to bother doing that. But I don't think Fischl is. I think Fischl would be here. And yeah, especially with the fucking bullshit they keep adding. They keep adding, like, non-damage mechanics. Like, for example, the most recent Papilla enemy, right? The Papilla Tenebris boss. Fischl's C6 is pretty much necessary for it in a lot of teams. I'll talk about it a lot more once I get around to recording the meta roundup. But because the Papilla shield isn't elemental application, it's elemental hits, it means that stuff with weird ICD can still shred the shield as long as it hits often, right? So characters like Kuki, Amber, right, with bursts that hit a lot but don't have like insane ICD, shred the fuck out of the shield. That also works on Fischl's C6. And because of that, Fischl's C6 is pretty much necessary for Sugar's teams to be able to clear that shield in time. It's not actually like straight up necessary, but almost. Anyways, Fischl would be here. What other characters would be here? I do think Xiangling is here. As much as Xiangling is a character that is significantly worse without C4, she is still good enough without it to be here, I think. Yao Yao would be here, I think. Lynette would be here. Cole would be here. I'm a Cole hater, but as long as you're willing to deal with the fucking clunk, she's not that bad. Hazo would be here. Where would Auroron be? Auroron would probably be here as well. Cinder City is too good. Yeah, Cinder City is really good. I could see Auroron going up here when we start getting teams that actually want him, right? Like, if you look at the teams where Auroron is played right now, you've got Chaska, obviously, but, like, Chaska teams aren't really complete right now. Citlali is going to be a lot better of an option for Chaska, and Citlali doesn't really allow you to have Electro characters on the team, right? So Auron's going to kind of get pushed out of Chaska teams, at least the best ones. And what other teams is Auroron good on? Electrocharge teams? He's not good enough to, like, make Electrocharge a good archetype. And so he's just, I don't know, a thing you can play. Like, Electrocharge has its value, obviously, but, like, in terms of just damage output, it's not really good enough in most situations. And Auroron isn't actually good enough to change that. And so the teams where he sees play right now is, like, Chevreuse teams, because he can use Cinder City. But, like, he doesn't work well in Chevreuse teams at all. He's just there because he's the only Electro Natlan character. So, like, basically, Auroron right now doesn't really have teams where his strengths can truly shine. And so because of that, I could see him getting, like, becoming better in the future. If there's more characters that are released that work well with him. Okay, next up. Who else is there? Toma? No. I don't think anyone else makes it in B. Or in A, sorry. Oh wait, no, that's not true. Kirara. I forgot Kirara existed. My bad. Alright, B! This is probably the tier that's gonna have the most characters. Or maybe not. Maybe C will have the most. Anyways. Lila. For sure. Goro, I think. Toma, for sure. Farazan, most likely. As much of a Farazan hater as I am, when she's not C6, she is that good. Like, at C6, she's arguably the best Anemo unit. That's not like a reaction support, right? Like the best Anemo damage focused unit. I'm not gonna say she's better than Kazuha and Sucrose, but outside of those two, I'd say that Farazan is arguably the best Anemo unit. At C6. Without C6, I don't think that's the case anymore, but she's still good enough. Like, the C6 is amazing, but even without C6, she still provides a lot. Candace? Dude, Candace, it's actually, I'm actually not sure where to put Candace. Maybe she does belong in B now. She is really good in Molani teams. Like, she only has one team where she works, but it's not a team that requires a lot. You just need Molani for the 5 stars. And like, and then C0 Candace makes the team work. Like with Sharon Lang. Like, it's not. This is the sort of team that you can make really easily. Thought she's good for Arlecchino too. Only at C6. She doesn't apply off-field Hydro without C6. Unless you're swapping, but you don't want to swap while you're on Arlecchino. Anyways. Beto goes here for sure. Beto has really good constellations. Her C2 is like the most well-known good constellation. But I would argue that it might not even be her best. Like, the more I play with Beto, the more I realize, especially nowadays, her C6 kind of provides so much value in the teams where you play her, because you never play Beto as solo Electro, so this is always going to increase both her and another character's damage. And then obviously the C2 is also great, but I think C0 Beto has fallen in my eyes a bit. She's still good as a defensive focused, or as an offensive focused defensive utility option. And because of Electro's lack of shielders, she still has a niche. But honestly, I think Lanyon's release is going to kind of reduce her use case a little bit, because I think you'd rather use a defensive option for your Anemo slot in Beto teams, as if you can have an Anemo slot. Is that a C0 4-star tier list? Yeah. I want to watch this video from Soluna, but I think it's interesting to try to get my thoughts in order before I do. Yunjin at B, that is definitely not gonna happen. No. I guess I can put Sayu here. That's fine, I guess. Sure, whatever. Lisa goes here, I think. Honestly, I think we've reached the point where Lisa's underrated. I don't think she's good, but I do think she's underrated. And maybe more importantly, in this case, Lisa gains fucking nothing from her constellations. Try landing her E at C0, but why would you try landing her E at C0? Lisa is a character that does not have an elemental skill, whether she's C0 or C6. That's why her constellations are pretty worthless. Because her skill is so bad that even with constellations, you don't want to use it. But Lisa is a fairly reasonable teammate option for Neville. Although she's not as good now with Auron's release, she's still fine. And same for Chevrolet's teams. She works relatively well in those. Like, she works. She's not great, but she works. Kachina probably makes it in here as well. I'm a Kachina hater, but she's not bad. Alright, C tier. Mika. Mika suffers from the lack of good physical carries. Mika's not that bad of a unit, honestly. He's just working with the worst carry imaginable, which means that he's not all that powerful. But, like, Mika's actually a good enough unit that he's even a reasonable option in non-physical teams. So imagine if there was an actual good physical carry. Alright, like, that's how you gotta think about it, alright? And that's why, when I talk about Ella being dog shit, okay? Like, this is what I mean. Mika is actually a good enough unit that you play him in non-physical teams. And people are still talking about how oh no, Ella just doesn't have good supports. No, she's just ass! Sorry. Anyways, as much as it pains me, I think K is... Well, no. K and Rosaria should be in B. They should be in B. They should be in B. They're not that bad. Rosaria kind of wants C2. Yeah, but even at C0, she still has some use, I think. Anyways, so Mika's here. I'm not gonna put... Okay, if you're looking at, like, Thundering Fury, I think Razor's actually, like, here, if not here. But Thundering Fury needs Bennett C6. So I don't think it's reasonable to assume that when you're looking at C0, at the power of C0 4-stars. So I'm going to assume that you don't have access to Bennett C6, which means that Thundering Fury is a lot worse. Yeah, who else is in C tier? Yunfei, probably. I think you could make an argument for Yunfei in B. Probably. She's not that bad of a carry. It's just, she's also not that good of a carry. And I don't think at C0, she's strong enough to justify playing her over your other available options, even on a newish account that doesn't have that many options. I think Dory makes it here. The main reason why Dory's perceived as such a bad character is because she's kind of just strictly worse than Cookie. But, like, if you don't have access to Cookie, because you don't have her, that kind of sucks for you. And I do think Dory can be used. It's gonna feel like ass, but she can be used. Diona, I think nowadays, pretty much the only value Diona has is her C6. If you don't have her C6, Diona's doing pretty much nothing for your team. There just aren't teams where you're severely lacking defensive utility, and what you're looking for from a defensive utility unit is a cryo battery. And Diona doesn't provide anything other than energy particles and defensive utility. Diona's a really good option in Ayaka teams, but she's not. Like, that's the thing. She's actually not a good option in Ayaka teams at all. Who else then? Charlotte or Mika over her. I'd use either of those before I use Diona. Can hold Elegy. Do you think that matters to a C0 4-star ranking? No, it doesn't. Also, Elegy's not that good for Ayaka teams. Right, like, what I've said so far, I'm not saying that Diona is a worthless unit. I'm saying without her C6, she's a worthless unit. At C6, there are situations where she can be good. Because 200 EM is a lot of EM. And it seems like Hoyo's trying to push forward Melt a little bit more. Gaming is probably here. Gaming is such a weird unit. Because if you look at Gaming's good teams, you'll notice that, like, they're actually so Constellation reliant. Or 5-star reliant. Like, if you look at the like, double Hydro Xianyun team, it'll do fine with C0 Gaming. Like, it's not gonna be great, but it'll be fine. Maybe, probably good enough to go here. But that's 3 5-stars. And if you look at his teams that aren't using the 5-stars, right? You look at, for example, the double Cryo Melt. Well, that's a good team, but the team's damage gets significantly increased by Bennett's C6, by Diona's C6, and by the additional Cryo app you get from Rosaria's C2. If you're looking at everyone's C0, the team is doing like half the fucking damage. Like, it's actually a massive difference. Because there's multiple different factors that you don't have that each enhance each other's effect on your overall damage. If you were only missing one of them, it's not too bad. But if you're missing all of Gaming's damage he gets from Constellations, the attack buff Bennett gets from C1, C5, the pyro damage buff from C6, the EM buff from from Rosaria, and the additional melt from, or sorry, the EM buff from Diona and the additional melt from Rosaria. All of these things get multiplied together. So lacking all of them is a massive difference. Right? Like if we're looking at expected output, right? Base attack, attack percent, flat attack, total attack, damage percent, CV, CM, EM multiplier, E attack, melt, E attack, MV, melt, MV, damage. Okay. Because I want to actually quantify the difference for that 4-star only team. Alright, so Gumming base attack 302. I think it's fair to assume Serpent Spine. Having only access to C0 4-stars it just means that you're relatively new. It doesn't mean that you're not buying the battle pass, and one battle pass is enough to get you Serpent Spine. We could also use Mailflower, but like I can't be bothered. Attack percent. So this is all C0, all C6. So 25% from Power Resonance, 20% from Noblesse. I don't know if in this team you'd use attack sends or not. For now, let's assume EM sends. 20% attack from substats. Flat attack, 350-ish, plus Bennett, which is 191 plus 565 times 95%. Okay. All C6, this flat attack buff is now 132. Okay. Damage percent. Pyro Goblet, this bullshit, 20%. Serpent Spine. Is that it? Maybe? All C6. Oh yeah, there's also that. Okay, all C6 you get 15% from Bennett. Crit value. 60% plus 62.2 plus 20 times 6.6 plus 27.6 times 2. Plus 36% times 2. No, instead of Serpent Spine, I think we should look at Mailed Flower. Because otherwise the cows get a little dank because of potential overflow crit. And I can't be bothered with that, man. This is going to be 24% attack. And all C6. Oh yeah, I guess you also get Power Resonance. Plus 80%. 187 plus 80 plus 96, so 206. 206 plus 200. You don't get crit from Power Resonance? No, but you get crit from Power Resonance. Effective attack melt. You mean? Motion value melt. 391.7 times. How many do you get with C C0, Rosaria. 3? Can you get 4? I'm not sure if you can. You probably can't, actually. No, maybe you can. Let's say it's 4. 4 versus 6. Then 629.7 times 2. Okay. Then 460.8 times 2 times 6 plus 740.8 times. Yeah. That's the difference between all of those characters at C0 versus all of them at C6. Okay? And obviously it's a bit approximative. You're not actually gonna get perfect uptime on all your buffs, so it's not exactly that. It's probably gonna be closer to 2.5 than 2.7, but I think this illustrates the point, okay? Gumming is a character where he does have good teams, and he even does have good teams with only 4 stars, but the constellations matter a lot, not just on him. Right, the only difference was his own constellations. Um, mm, Alright, he only gets like 60% more damage. Which is good, like obviously it's a pretty big fucking difference. But even if he's C6, if the rest of your team is all C0, it's still not gonna be that great. Anyways. What about all C6 gumming C0? We can take a look at that as well. Is that it, or did I fuck something up? No, that is it, more or less. I probably fucked up a decimal somewhere or some shit, but... Anyways. What else we got? Maybe Sethos? Sethos is in a similar scenario. But I think it's a bit less flagrant with Sethos than it is with Gumming. Like, yeah, obviously his constellations and official constellations matter a lot for the team DPS, but it's not as big of a gap as it's not as big of a gap as it is with Gumming. But he's also not as good. But maybe it is enough to put him in like B. I'm hesitating for Sethos. I'm not sure. Charlotte is also going to be here. Really not much to say about her, honestly. She's can use TTDS, I guess. That's called. For the rest, I don't think any of the remaining ones make it in C. We're going to default to D, and then we'll add a row below for the garbage. The condolences tier. No, Sarah's not there. As much as I hate Sarah, I don't think she's there. I think that's it. Maybe I'm too rough on Kaveh, honestly. Because on the hypothetical account scenario that I described, having a character that can apply Dendro is still kind of valuable. So maybe he that's enough to put him in D. How many units in S? 5. Amber is garbage. I agree, but a character being garbage doesn't mean that they don't have any use whatsoever. Amber can have a use. But I guess technically so can Chongyun and Xinyan. Okay, fine, you've convinced me. Amber goes down here, sure. Amber takes care of pyro torches. I mean, when's the last time you've seen a pyro torch? Be honest. Blood is still exploring Mondstadt in almost 2025. Anyways, a few of the characters that are here, namely, I guess not a few, but like, some of the characters are a little bit higher than like just their power as a whole would dictate, because Hoyo is like leaning more and more into cringe bullshit enemies, and characters that can deal with the cringe bullshit mechanics can have a bit more value because of that, right? Like in this Abyss, for example, a character that can deal with the Golden Wolf Lord is actually somewhat valuable, right? Now, is it enough to justify putting a Geo character on your team just for this? By itself, honestly, no. However, paired with the Blessing of the Abyssal Moon, that makes it so that if you trigger Crystallize, you deal true damage to enemies. It is actually enough to justify the slot, I think. Well, like when you don't have a lot of options. I do think that if you have C6 Fischl, you'd rather use that, but not everyone does, you know? Anyways, these are my thoughts on the value of 4 stars at C0.